For over a century, the golden mask of Tutankhamun has been the single most recognized artifact from the ancient world.
Tutankhamun's mask is an icon. And I think part of it is because it is made of solid gold, and a lot of people get wowed by that.
Millions of people have stood in front of it. Thousands of academic papers have been written about it. Every square centimeter of its surface has been photographed, measured, chemically analyzed, and debated in journals and lecture halls across 5 continents. Scholars believed they understood this object completely. They believed there was nothing left to find. But when an international research team aimed the most advanced scanning technology ever used on a pharaonic artifact directly through the gold, penetrating into the interior space that had been sealed against the mummy's face for more than 3,300 years, what appeared on their screens changed everything we thought we knew about who this mask was really made for and what it was actually designed to do. This is what the clearest scan of King Tut's mask ever produced actually revealed, and why the researchers who saw the images first didn't speak for several minutes afterward. On October 28, 1925, Howard Carter carefully removed the final layer of linen wrapping from the mummy of Tutankhamun and laid eyes on the golden mask for the first time. He noted in his journal that the face appeared as though it had been finished only yesterday. After more than 3 millennia sealed inside the Valley of the Kings, there was no significant cracking, no visible deterioration, no sign that time had touched it at all. The mask weighs 10.23 kilograms of solid gold inlaid with colored glass, lapis lazuli, carnelian, and obsidian. Its surface is shaped in the classical style of ancient Egyptian funerary art, balanced features, eyes lined in black, a false beard attached beneath the chin as a symbol of divine kingship. It is, by any reasonable measure, the most instantly recognizable face from the ancient world, and from the moment Carter lifted it into the light, the global response was overwhelming. Newspapers printed the image on their front pages. Museums across Europe and America competed for exhibition rights. An entire generation of archaeologists entered the field because of what they saw in those photographs. In the century that followed, the mask was subjected to virtually every form of analysis available. The inscriptions across the shoulders and chest were translated line by line. They correspond to a version of Chapter 151b from the Book of the Dead, a funerary formula meant to guide the king's soul through the afterlife. Each inlaid stone was identified and assigned its symbolic meaning: lapis lazuli for the sky and rebirth, turquoise for vitality, obsidian for the depth of the divine gaze. No surface detail was considered too minor to examine. So when an international conservation team began planning a comprehensive digital scan of the mask's interior in the early 2000s, no one in the archaeological community expected surprises. This was documentation, not discovery, a formality, a chance to confirm digitally what everyone already knew from 100 years of study. But the mask did not cooperate with those expectations. To understand why what was found inside the mask proved so unsettling, you need to understand the context surrounding every object in Tutankhamun's burial. Because from the very first moment Howard Carter's team broke through the sealed doorway of Tomb K Face 62 in 1922, something didn't add up. The burial chamber was unusually small. Pharaohs typically spent decades preparing their tombs, beginning the moment they took the throne. The result was vast architectural complexes with long corridors and multiple connected chambers. Tutankhamun's looked more like a last-minute arrangement than a planned resting place for a king. The wall paintings inside showed irregularities that specialists found difficult to explain. In well-preserved royal tombs from the same era, murals were executed by trained artisans who worked slowly, with precision. In Cave Eye 62, certain lines appear unsteady in a way that can't be blamed on age or damage. Analysis of the painted layers suggests that in several scenes, the artist continued working before the base coat had dried, a shortcut almost never seen under normal conditions. The grave goods raised even more questions. On multiple royal objects within the tomb, the cartouche, the oval frame containing the pharaoh's name, showed signs of surface disturbance around Tutankhamun's inscription. Under magnification, early conservators documented areas that didn't match the natural wear on the rest of the object. It looked as though earlier names had been scraped away before Tutankhamun's was carved in their place. Even the outer granite sarcophagus didn't fit. It was physically too large for the chamber prepared to receive it. Workers had been forced to chip away portions of its edges to maneuver it inside. The rough tool marks left behind are still visible, evidence of last-minute adjustments that were never part of the original plan. All of these inconsistencies point to a single widely accepted explanation. Tutankhamun died young and unexpectedly, likely around the age of 19. Officials were forced to assemble an entire royal burial under enormous time pressure, and the tomb shows the marks of that urgency at every turn. This explanation accounts for nearly everything inside KV-62, with one glaring exception, the mask itself, because if the entire burial was a product of haste, then the single most intricate and labor-intensive object in the entire collection shows absolutely no trace of that same rush. It is, by every measure, a masterwork of precision, and that contradiction was the first crack in what scholars thought they understood. When researchers turned their attention specifically to the mask's exterior, the observations they made formed a pattern that was increasingly difficult to reconcile. X-ray fluorescence scanning, a technique that identifies chemical composition without physical contact, revealed that the gold used for the face differs from the gold used for the headdress. The proportions of silver and copper vary between these two regions in a way that's measurable and consistent. Under controlled lighting, each section reflects light differently. This isn't an equipment error, it's the chemical signature of two materials that originated from different sources or were produced through different metallurgical processes. On a royal funerary object crafted for a single king under a unified plan, this kind of inconsistency is not expected. Ancient Egyptian royal workshops maintained strict quality control over materials, especially for objects of the highest status. Then there are the ears. The mask's ears are pierced. It's a small detail easy to overlook, but within the entire system of ancient Egyptian royal art, pierced ears appear exclusively in depictions of women and children. On official funerary representations of adult pharaohs, they simply don't occur. Creating those openings in solid gold requires deliberate physical action. This is not something that happens by accident. The area immediately surrounding the cartouche, where Tutankhamun's throne name is inscribed, responds to light differently from the adjacent metal. This isn't the kind of uniform weathering that develops gradually over centuries. It's a localized phenomenon confined specifically to the region of the inscription, consistent with metalwork having been performed on that area before the current name was engraved, and the facial features themselves don't align with other known representations of Tutankhamun. Statues and reliefs produced during his lifetime depict a narrower jaw, less prominent cheekbones, and a different eye shape. The face on the mask is broader, more angular, and departs from those portraits in ways that can be specifically measured. Egyptian funerary art followed strict conventions in how facial features were rendered. These differences aren't random artistic variation, they're structural inconsistencies that demand an explanation. British Egyptologist Nicholas Reeves was among those who took these surface anomalies furthest. He argued that the mask was originally crafted not for Tutankhamun at all, but for a female pharaoh named Nefer-Neferuaten, a ruler widely believed to have been Nefertiti herself, the legendary queen who vanished from historical records under mysterious circumstances. Reeves pointed to the pierced ears, the mismatched gold alloys, and what he identified as traces of an earlier cartouche bearing the name Ankh-Kheperur beneath Tutankhamun's inscription. His theory was explosive. Not everyone agreed, but something about the mask's surface was clearly off, and no amount of conventional explanation could fully account for all the irregularities at once. Yet every one of these observations belonged to the exterior, the side the world had been staring at for 100 years. Nobody had ever been able to see what was on the other side. The interior surface pressed directly against the linen-wrapped face of the dead king, until the scanners were activated. The international research team assembled inside the controlled conservation laboratory of the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. They brought 3 distinct systems, a portable X-ray fluorescence scanner for surface chemistry, a high-resolution computed tomography system to map internal structure, and a neutron scanning apparatus, a form of radiation capable of penetrating solid metal without causing damage, while returning structural data at a resolution beyond what conventional X-rays can achieve. The first CT scans confirmed what surface analysis had already suggested. The mask is not a single uniform mass of gold. It's constructed from multiple separate components, joined by welds that are positioned at structural stress points rather than for visual concealment. The joints distribute tension evenly across the object, preventing separation over time. The metal thickness varies across different regions in a way consistent with deliberately controlling flexibility and weight distribution. This is not crude workmanship. It reflects a level of engineering that requires deep understanding of how gold behaves under stress over extended periods. Within the false beard, CT imaging revealed a concealed internal support tube designed to secure the beard to the chin while completely hiding the connection from external view. No other known funerary object from the same period contains a comparable mechanical solution. It serves no symbolic function, it's purely structural, and it remained invisible to everyone until modern scanning made it detectable. The headdress contains Egyptian blue, the earliest known synthetic pigment in human history, produced by heating a precise mixture of copper, calcium, and silicon dioxide at carefully controlled temperatures between 850 and 1000 degrees Celsius. This isn't a pigment that can be created through trial and error. It requires specific chemical knowledge and exact thermal control. The eyes, formed from obsidian and quartz, are carved with a precision that creates a startlingly lifelike depth. Modern jewelers who have examined the cuts note that they demand control of pressure and angle that remains difficult to reproduce consistently even with contemporary tools. Every finding pointed in a single direction. The mask was crafted at a level of technical sophistication that exceeds what surviving records of ancient Egyptian workshops can fully explain. But all of this still belonged to the outer structure. When the neutron scanning system was activated and began passing through the gold into the interior, into the space that had been pressed against the mummy's face in total darkness for over 3,000 years, the images that appeared on the screen brought the entire room to silence. The neutron images revealed two distinct elements on the mask's inner surface, the side that rests in direct contact with the face of the mummy. The first was a second thin layer of gold, shaped not into a flat or neutral surface, but into the precise contours of a specific human face, a jawline, cheekbones, structural anatomical details modeled with extraordinary precision. When researchers measured these internal contours and compared them with anatomical data derived from CT scans of Tutankhamun's actual skull, obtained through earlier full-body examinations of the mummy, the correspondence was unmistakable. The jawline angle, the brow ridge, the curvature of the cheekbones, all aligned with Tutankhamun's skeletal structure in a way that cannot be attributed to coincidence. This creates a direct and bewildering contradiction. The face on the outside of the mask, the face the world has studied and photographed and used as the defining image of Tutankhamun for a century, doesn't match his known physical features, but the hidden inner face does, two layers within the same object. Two different identities, the outer one visible to the world, the inner one pressed against the king in darkness, matching his actual bones. The second discovery was even more difficult to process. Carved into the inner gold surface, invisible to the naked eye and unrecorded in any documentation from Carter's time to the moment the scan was performed, was a series of extremely fine inscriptions. Specialists in ancient Egyptian language identified them as a funerary formula belonging specifically to the reign of Tutankhamun. They include a shortened form of his throne name used in restricted ritual contexts, a passage invoking passage through the eastern horizon, and a symbol associated with rebirth under the god Amun. These inscriptions are not placed on the exterior where light can reach them and eyes can read them. They exist on the interior in direct physical contact with the linen-wrapped face of the dead king. Once the mask was set in place and the burial sealed, no person, no priest, no official could ever see them again. The inscriptions on the outside of the mask, the 12-line formula across the shoulders and chest that scholars have studied for more than a century, are oriented outward. According to the logic of Egyptian funerary practice, they are positioned to be seen and read by divine beings as the king's soul journeys into the afterlife. This makes sense within the Egyptian framework. Text exists to be seen, to communicate, to transmit meaning to an intended recipient. But the inscriptions inside the mask cannot be seen by anyone or anything once the object is sealed. They cannot serve a communicative function under any conventional understanding of how text operates in Egyptian ritual practice. And yet someone chose to place them there, executed with the highest level of precision found anywhere on the entire artifact, positioned in direct physical contact with the face of the deceased within a space that no one was ever supposed to be able to verify. Across the entire body of known ancient Egyptian funerary artifacts examined with comparable technology, no other object has been documented with a feature like this: ritual inscriptions placed inside, touching the body, completely unreadable after sealing, crafted with more care than the visible exterior. If this were a standard practice, there would be precedent somewhere. If it's an exception, then it demands a reason. And none of the existing explanations, not reuse, not urgency, not the chaotic conditions of the Amarna period, can account for it. Because what was placed inside the mask is not a leftover trace of haste. It is the product of deliberate planning, executed at the highest level of skill in a location that no one was ever meant to see. In August 2014, staff at the Egyptian Museum in Cairo were adjusting the lighting system on the mask's display when the iconic braided beard snapped off. What happened next has been reconstructed through staff testimony and official conservation records, and it remains one of the most alarming incidents in the history of artifact preservation. Instead of stopping and contacting a professional conservation team, a decision was made on the spot. Industrial epoxy, a substance designed for permanent mechanical bonding, was used to reattach the beard. The adhesive hardened quickly, leaving a thick, visible residue around the chin joint. When news of the incident became public in early 2015, the international response was immediate and severe. 8 museum employees were ultimately disciplined. German conservator Christian Ekman from the Römisch Germanisches Zentralmuseum was brought in to lead the restoration effort. His team used natural beeswax heated to controlled temperatures, combined with specialized tools to lift the hardened epoxy away layer by layer. The work progressed agonizingly slowly, measured in hours per centimeter. As the team worked closer to the underlying gold, they discovered something no prior assessment had revealed. The mask was far more fragile in certain areas than anyone had realized. In some regions, the gold was so thin that even minor uncontrolled pressure during adhesive removal could have caused irreversible damage. The restoration was ultimately successful. The mask was returned to display condition. But the incident raises a question that doesn't appear in any conservation report. If that epoxy removal process had caused damage to the interior surfaces, to the hidden face shaped to match Tutankhamun's skull, to the invisible inscriptions that no one knew existed until neutron scanning revealed them, that information would have been destroyed without any record that it had ever been there. The hidden inner face and the contact inscriptions survived for more than 3,000 years without being seen. Within a few careless hours in 2014, they could have been obliterated by a decision made in minutes, leaving no trace they had ever existed. The discoveries inside the mask, the anatomical interface, and the sealed contact inscriptions have no precedent among royal funerary objects examined with comparable technology. This may mean that Tutankhamun's mask is a singular exception, or it may mean that other artifacts have simply never been questioned this way, with this level of resolution, because no one thought to look. Consider what this implies about the mask's construction. Someone, likely a master craftsman operating at the highest level of the royal workshop, carved inscriptions into the interior gold with exquisite precision, knowing that once the mask was placed over the king's face and the burial sealed, no living person would ever read those words again. They weren't decorations. They weren't instructional texts in any conventional sense. They weren't mistakes left behind by workers in a hurry. They were placed there deliberately by someone who understood that no human eyes would ever verify their existence. And the interface, the one that actually matches Tutankhamun's skeletal anatomy, while the outer face does not, suggests something even more extraordinary. Whoever constructed this mask created two identities within a single object, one for the world to see, one for the dead king alone. The public face may have belonged to someone else entirely, perhaps Nefertiti, perhaps another ruler from those turbulent final years of the Amarna period, but the private face, the one pressed against the mummy in permanent darkness, that one was made specifically for Tutankhamun. For 100 years, the world looked at the outside and believed it understood. The scan revealed that the real story was always on the inside, in a space no one had ever been able to reach. What the ancient craftsmen intended by placing those inscriptions where no one could read them, and by modeling a hidden face that matched the king while the visible face did not, remains a question that no existing framework in Egyptology can fully answer. The mask has been on public display for over a century. Millions have gazed at it, and for all that time, the face they were studying wasn't even the real one. The real face was underneath, pressed against the dead, waiting in the dark for someone to finally look. What do you think those hidden inscriptions were meant to do? And who do you believe the outer face of the mask actually represents? Tell me in the comments. If you want to know the moment new discoveries surface about what's really hidden inside Egypt's most famous artifacts, hit subscribe and turn on notifications because this story is far from finished.